In this video, I'll be digitizing a tribute design that I'm doing for somebody whose friend passed away. Now, this drawing of Frank Zappa was created in 1975 by Joseph Mays from Parkersburg, West Virginia, when he was 15 years old. Now, I remember in the very late 70s listening to Frank Zappa for the first time, and I knew that if my grandmother heard the words that I was listening to, she'd probably want to wash my ears out with soap. Now, I know by today's standards, Frank might be considered pretty tame, but to all you freaks out there, this design might just bring back a few memories. Now, if you like these types of videos, please remember to hit that like button, comment below, and we'd very much appreciate if you subscribe to our channel so you'll be notified every time we release new content. Now, I am using our EL Digitizer to do this design. I've brought in the artwork. It is at 3.75 inches right now. I wanted it to be 3.5 for left chest, which there is some kind of dead space on the top and the bottom, so to speak. So when I do get this done, it'll probably be around 3.5, and I can always adjust it afterwards. But I am going to reduce the opacity just a little bit so we can see it a little clearer on the screen. I do have my 3D on. I am using a pen because I'm going to be doing sketch work, but I'm going to be using sketch work for part of it, like the hair and the face and the guitar and the feet. But with the jumper, I want to make sure that I use a fill stitch so I see a little bit of a difference between the two. I'm also going to use some of the automated tools that we have within the software, and I'll explain those a little bit as we move forward. So now that everything is set up there, I will bring up my sequence so we can see it as we're moving forward. And I'm going to bring in my running stitch. So I have a running stitch set. It's set at 2 millimeters, and I do have my free draw tool on. There are other tools we can use as well, which we'll use later, but that pretty much gets me ready to go. And I'm going to go into my 6:1 scale and just pan over on this. So I'm going to start right about here. Now, when I start here, I'm going to start on the inside of the leg. So it's going to tie in, and then I'll just come over here, come over to the foot. And again, because this is sketch work, I can do a couple of pieces back and forth and a couple pieces there. It doesn't have to be perfect, and I can end right there. Now, the way this works is when I look at my sequence, I can see I've done one foot, but because I have snap to anchor on, which is right up over here, the snap to anchor tool is right up here, and it is selected. You can see that it is kind of highlighted a little bit. That means that when I see that little round red circle appear, I can continue on the path of that object, and then you're going to see that it just continued the object. And as I move forward and as I pick up from that anchor point, it will do the same thing. I can just come in here, do a couple points back and forth, and have a couple of points here, and then finish right there, and it just continues on the path. So that is the advantage of the snap to anchor. So it finished there. That's going to be my stop point. Can always confirm by looking at my objects. There's my start, there's my stop. And if I want to then do a different piece, I'm going to go back to here, and let's do a fill stitch, because the next thing I want to do is the jumper. And the jumper, I want to make sure that I come here, and let's just grab this here. I'm going to make sure that I use my fast draw tool, and I can pretty much pick up anywhere I want and start to draw around this object. Again, using my kind of artistic liberty, I'm going to come in, and I can always backspace if I don't like something, and I'm going to put a point there, point here, point here. I'm going to do the bottom of the bell bottoms there. And then we're going to just continue with our fast draw, go to the bottom of this bell bottom, and then continue up the other side. As soon as I hit enter, it closes the object. Then I can put in my inclination point, hit enter again. I get my start point, which is here, my stop point, which is there. And let's just hit enter, and I can see that that is now the next object in my sequence. Now I'm going to start up here, and because my smart join tools and everything are all set up, I don't need to necessarily worry about anything kind of happening wrong. So I'm going to go back to here, go back to my run stitch. And if I come here now and look at this object, I'm going to probably start right here and start doing some of these objects within the guitar. So let's just start right here on this point. And I'm going to go back to my freehand. So I'm going to come here and just do a little bit of the freehand tool. And that is going to give me that piece there. And then I'm going to come and continue this and come here. And I will just continue to draw around. I can do it in as few or as many pieces as possible. And that is the advantage of the snap to anchor, so that when I get to that point there, Here, if I want to make sure these lines are a little bit thicker, I'm just going to come in and do 3 or 4 or 5 passes, whatever I think needs to be done. And that's going to give me some of the extra detail that I want in this guitar. And it's going to make it look a little bit bolder. So then I'm going to come here, do this piece, and again, come back over to here. And that is going to get me right to that point right there. And then I'm going to look at this and say, okay, I'm going to come up the hand, do some of this detail in here. It's kind of hard to assess what all of this really is, so I'm just going to use my imagination, put in a few little squiggles as I move forward, and just kind of, fill in the blank. Same thing here, a couple little pieces, go over here to the hand, and this is where it's coming down the other side. And that's all I really need there. I can come up to this point, and then I'm just going to continue on my path and do this piece, and I'll come in and do that other hand afterwards. So a couple of pieces there, a couple of pieces there. This is all artistic merit at this point, as long as I know that when I am done, it is going to always have a start and a stop point, because I want to have as few trims as possible in this design. So I'll come up to this point right here, and that way I can see my objects 1, 2, 3 within my sequence view. Each of them has a start and stop. And if I do come in here and I turn on my commands, I have view commands on, I will be able to see if there's any little scissors that appear. Those represent a trim or a jump. And then I can come right to here and see that that is the next object that I want to do. There's my endpoint right there. So let's go right to here. And again, if you ever want to see your endpoints, you can just, so let's just go back here and undo that one. But if I ever want to see my endpoints, I can select that object and tell it to do edit path, and I can see there's my start, there's my stop. So it's all one continuous path. And that is what I'm really looking for, is I want my designs to sew out and be one path. So now I'm going to click off of that. I'm going to go to my fill stitch, and this is where this part of the jumper, this top part of the jumper, I'm going to do this. Again, I'm going to change from my free draw to my fast draw. And I'm just going to put in my points kind of like this. And let's just do this here. And come here, do this little piece right to here. And hit the enter. And when I hit the enter, it's going to close the shape. Again, just inclination points, start and stop. It really doesn't matter where I stop at this point, because I can see a little pair of scissors are right there. Let's turn off the 3D for a minute so you can see that. And I can go in here at any time and, not look at the backdrop, so I can see how the design looks. So there are all kinds of different ways to view this as I'm moving forward. But what I want to do is I want to go back to my running stitch, because I want to continue on this path. Let's turn the 3D back on so I can see. I want to continue on this path and work my way around the design. So let's go back to a run stitch. So I'm going to go to a run, and let's go back to our free draw. And I'm going to start right here, and I'm just going to put in a little line, make sure that the join closest point worked. And now I can continue on the path, and it's going to kind of do this little piece, and here is just where I can come in and use, a little bit of artistic merit, because I have no idea really what all those squiggles are supposed to be. So I'm just kind of guessing at this point. But I know here what I want to do is I want to get into this part of the body right here, and I'm going to stop, and I'm going to go back to my fill stitch, and I'm going to choose my fast draw. And this time I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to come in, and if I don't like a point, I can always hit that backspace. I'm just going to do a fast draw here and create that shape and hit enter. And again, my inclination for my fill, start and stop point are fine, but there's my next object. Now I can just go back to a run, and that's really all the fills that I have. So from this point forward, I'm going to be using my run with my free draw, and I end it here. So now I'm going to come up, and let's just, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I could come right over here, and let's go right to this point and continue on and do some of these pieces. So I'm going to come here and go right back down and then go over this object, go back over this object, come over here, do a couple of passes back and forth. I want to stay kind of pretty consistently on the line and just do something like that. So there I have that object now done. I'm just going to pan over a little bit so I don't, block the screen at all. And then I'm going to continue here and I'm going to do some of this detail going around. So at this point I can come in here and let's just do a couple of those little, I guess those tuners or whatever they call it. I'm not really a musical person, but let's go here and let's do the rest of that arm coming down. And then I'm going to come here and do these little pieces here. And again, that's all I need to do. I can come in here and put a couple little pieces in. But if I want to make sure that this does look like the top of the neck of the guitar, I'm just going to go around like that and continue on to this point right here. And that is pretty much where I could be. Now, this is where I can come in now, and I could come back over here and just come in and start to work on the hair. So right now, if I look in my sequence view, I can see that I have that last piece there. That's where I finish off. Let's just move this over, and I'm probably just going to do a couple of little random pieces going over, traveling over to this arm. So I'm going to do this arm right here, and I'm just going to pan over so I have a nice big view of it, and I'll come in, and if I imagine light hitting one side of this, I'll probably come here and do kind of something that looks like a couple of little fingers over this point. And then if I come back on this side, if I do kind of want to do a little bit of kind of, jaggedness, I'll probably do it along this top side so it looks like the light is hitting it. Come back and do one piece forward, one piece back. It's going to look a little darker on the top. I'm not going to do any more detail on the inside because I want that to look a little bit lighter, and that should pretty much be it. I mean, at this point at 600%, it's the small details are going to fill in the blanks. The person's imagination is going to fill in the blanks. So at this point, I'm just going to make sure that I come here. I'm going to travel over. I'm going to get to the nose, come right to this point here, and I'm going to stop. And then I'm going to continue on, and I'm just going to come here and let's stop and see what I've done so far. So if I wanted to, I could either travel in through the eye, which I think that's what I'm going to do. I'll keep this one consistent. I'm going to make sure that his nose has a little bit more to it. So a little bit of a darker, line, meaning 3 or 4 passes. And then this point right here, this is where I'm going to get into doing the mustache hair. So I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of freehand jagged motion, and this is really where we start to get a little more artistic in the design, and it is going to look pretty freehand. So that actually looks good. There's where I ended off. I'm just going to pan over, and then I'm going to pick up where I ended off, and now I can come over to this part of the hair, travel up. So that line is kind of a traveling line, but this is where I can come in, and I can either come in here or I could come in here. I'm kind of thinking that this is some type of headwear. I can't really decide exactly what it is. So again, I'm going to let my imagination take over, and I see kind of a dark line there. I have this area, which I'm assuming is the eye, but I want to make sure I have 3 or 4 passes there. I might want to make sure I have a couple passes there as well. And then I want to get into this area, and I just want to kind of do a little bit of what I think it's supposed to be. Not 100% sure, but I can have a couple of passes there, a couple more passes here. I can do something like that. Again, I have no clue what these are supposed to be or what they're actually supposed to look like. So I'm just putting in some random pieces here and kind of hoping that it's going to look good when it's done. So that should, again, fill in the blanks for the person's imagination. And this is where I'm going to kind of almost go into freehand mode, and I'm just going to start doing some random sketch work. So I'm just going to go like this, back and forth. And I know my spacing at 6:1 because I've digitized at this scale for so many years. So I'm just going to randomly go through this and, manually put in some of these points, so that I am going to kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. And I can see a bit of space there. and a little bit of space here. So this is going to look pretty hair-like when it's done, actually, and that's the goal, is I want to make sure that this actually resembles his crazy hair. And this is where I love that fast draw tool, because I'm literally just, doodling. I'm kind of sketch working right on the program. Again, I'm going to pick up right where I left off here. So I'm going to go like this. And make sure that I get my points in like that. And at that point, I can pretty much finish off wherever I want. So that is good there. It's just going to make sure that it does one tie-in. So if I look at this design, these are all the objects that I've created. I have a run path, and then I go to a fill. But the beautiful part of this is when I look at it at this scale, and let's just go out of this right here, I'm going to take this piece right now and get rid of the backdrop just so I don't see it. And I'm going to bring this to a 1:1 scale just so we can see what it looks like on screen. But there is my design. It is pretty small. And if I bring that up to full screen, so let's just fit it to the screen, you're going to actually see that it actually, is going to look pretty cool when it's done. So that is the rendering that we have there as far as the artwork is concerned. Again, we're going to take this, run it on the machine. The most important part for me is I do not want to have any jumps or trims. There is one start position. It starts here and it starts down here. And when it finishes in the hair, and that's it. It's going to do a continuous path. There's like 4,100 stitches on the nose. So let's save this as our native file format, which in our software, it's a JDX format. That way I can always go in, and if I ever need to edit something, I can grab that object and I can go into my node edit or whatever I want and start editing everything. But I will also want to make sure that I save it in the file format for my machine, which we're going to run this on a Tajima Sai. So I need to save it as the DST file. Well, our tribute design to Joseph is done, and here is Mr. Zappa in cartoons. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you next time.